On behalf of Brookline CAN and the League of Women Voters, I would like to welcome you all this afternoon to our Candidates Forum. As I said, there are 7 people going to be speaking with us. We have 4 of the 6 candidates for 3 seats on the school committee. They will be followed by 3 candidates for the 1 seat on the select board. The voters guide that the league puts out is just about completed. You'll be able to find it online at vote411.org, and the print copies will be distributed around town next week. Housekeeping, please turn off your phones and other devices so that we don't get annoying clicks and rings, and some people have beautiful music, but we really want to hear what the speakers have to say. If anybody needs it, the bathrooms are right back in that hallway. I also, before we want to get started, want to give a shout out to our new Council on Aging Director, Emily Williams, in the back, who has been very, very busily going around trying to meet every senior in the community, and I think she's doing a great job. What else do I have to say? Oh, I need to introduce our timekeeper, Matt Weiss, who's sitting up front, and our moderator, Devin Fields, who many of you may remember was see if I can get this right, the assistant town administrator for operations here, and then she left us last year and is now the deputy city manager for operations for the town of Chelsea. And she has very, very generously agreed to moderate the panel and all of us unruly people today. So, Devin, it's all yours.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much, Janet. And thank you to everyone who joined us today for the League of Women Voters and Brookline CAN Candidates Forum. We will follow a straightforward format this afternoon, beginning with our 4 school committee candidates, followed by our 3 select board candidates. And each candidate will have 2 minutes to give their introductory remarks. That's their elevator pitch to you all today. And then we will be asking 2 questions from the committee who planned the forum. They will have 2 minutes to respond to those remarks, and then we will transition to audience questions. We have received some in advance. We're going to go back and forth between the ones we've received in advance and the ones that you are going to give us here live today. You will have 1 minute to ask your question, so please be prepared and be concise. I will give a 30-second warning with the help of Matt, as I am famously known for. And then at the conclusion, candidates will have 2 minutes to give their final statements. So I would love to.
2 minutes?
Oh no, 1
1
minute. So sorry, I'm giving them extra time. They'll have 90 seconds to respond to your questions, and then they will have 1 minute to do their concluding remarks. So I'm really excited to be here today. This is an exciting time in Brookline, and we're going to get started. So I have in my pocket pieces of paper that have a candidate's name on it, and that's who we'll begin with. So the first candidate is Valerie Frias. This question is one that will be able to be answered by
intros first or questions first?
Yeah, so sorry. I'm also 8 months pregnant, so I'm having pregnancy brain, and I appreciate that. So Valerie, get us started.
Thank you, Devin. I want to thank Brookline CAN and the League of Women Voters for hosting today. I'm Val Frias. I am just completing my first term on school committee. I'm an attorney. I am a deputy director of the Elder Justice Unit in the Attorney General's office. And prior to that, I ran an elder organization in Boston, a $60 million organization during the pandemic, and left there just this past fall. So I was there for 5 years. I have 2 children. They're 9th graders, and they started at Beat Putterham and now are freshmen in high school. I am extremely committed to student-facing services, that we are serving all of our students, whether they need to be challenged, supported, or both. I want to make sure that we have academic excellence in our schools, that we have all those programs in our schools that make Brookline great, and that we have fiscal accountability. Everybody, I'm sure, in this room knows that we're facing a fiscal challenge and are off this evening to look at more budget adjustments. So I want to make sure that we're being collaborative with our town partners and moving forward to prioritize jobs in the classroom, educators in the classroom, and resources for our students. Thank you.
We're going to just go right down the line.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Donna Perry. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. I'm running for school committee. I grew up in a small apartment on Harvard Avenue, which is a tiny road just off Harvard Street. We didn't have much, and that experience shaped my understanding of how vital a strong community is. My two children started kindergarten at Lawrence. They're now in 11th and 12th grade. My son has special needs, and through him, I've seen firsthand how well our schools can support diverse students and where we need to improve. I have been very actively involved in the schools for over a decade. I've been a special educator liaison. I've been invited to serve on a principal search committee. I worked on our COVID reopening and I didn't co-found, but I'm a board member of the Brookline Parents Organization, which is a thriving advocacy and analysis group. I've built strong relationships with parents, educators, administrators, school committee, and community members, many of whom are here today. Together, we've influenced important operational and educational issues like literacy instruction, bullying prevention, and strengthening school-based site councils. I understand the structure, the mandates, and the financial challenges of our schools, and running for this office is a natural next step for me. I'm running for school committee not just because I care about our schools, but also because I care about their ability to continue to live up to their promise. Right now, we need new voices on the school committee, people who can restore trust and transparency and focus on investing the school's limited resources in classrooms and learning. The school committee needs new voices in order to be a proactive, decisive, and accountable leadership body. This is work I'm ready for. I'm smart, I'm strong, I'm collaborative and analytical, and I want to move our schools forward with a focus and dedication they deserve. I hope to earn your support and your vote on Tuesday, May 6th. Together, I truly believe we can ensure a brighter, more sustainable
You're
future.
all set. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Helen Charlepsky. I've been a resident of Brookline for the last 45 years, and I've been on the school committee for 33 of those years. So that you know me a little bit, I'm originally from Detroit and grew up there, went to school in Michigan, and got my master's in social work actually at the University of Michigan, and worked after that in social work at Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem, and then here at Children's Hospital in the psychiatry department as a Spanish-speaking social worker. I have 3 children who've gone K through 12 in the Brookline Public Schools, some of them with your children, actually. And it's interesting. Many people have asked me, why are you running? You know, you've been there a long time. And I have been involved in the schools for a long time. But, times right now are not calm. And I care deeply about the public schools of Brookline, our students and our amazing educators. If times were calm, I would be comfortable handing off the baton, but times are not at all calm, and our schools urgently need institutional history. If you don't know the history, you're bound to make mistakes along the way. Most of the people on the school committee have been there less than 3 years, some just 3 of them 1 year. So I'm hoping that we'll talk more about some of my thoughts about the school committee, the areas of the primary areas that we need to work on and that I can work on are financial stability, educational excellence, and trust and collaboration between the town and the schools. Those are the 3 areas. Thank you.
You're next.
Okay. Hi, I'm Bob Weintraub. Thank you for coming today. It's great to see a big crowd. I've had a long and interesting professional career. I started out in growing up in Queens, New York City. I went to Bayside High School and graduated in a class of 1,734 students. My mother always told me that I sounded like a bum, sounded like I came from Brooklyn. I said, well, I'm growing up in Queens, Ma. But I made it past that criticism and moved on in my life. After graduating from college, I moved to Birmingham, Alabama. I was a community organizer working with the Black community in Birmingham, partnering with the Southern Christian Leadership Council and also the HBC College, Miles College in Birmingham, Alabama. Just about every Sunday, I was introduced by some influential people at Black churches in and around Birmingham, and I would organize voting rights. I organized voting rights opportunities for this community. And at the same time, I was invited to teach an English class at Miles College, and I absolutely loved teaching that class. And I fell in love with teaching. I moved to New Jersey, taught in New York City, moved up here, was the director of an alternative high school program in Arlington Public Schools. Then I landed in Lowell, and I was the founding principal of the City Magnet School that was designed to desegregate the Lowell Public Schools as part of the voluntary desegregation program there. We had a unique curriculum called Microsociety. We were visited by CBS News because we had a very unusual curriculum that the kids really engaged in. And we were ranked as one of the top 50 elementary schools in the nation. I was very proud of my work in Lowell. And then I came to the Lighthouse District in Brookline. I don't think I'm going to have a lot of time to talk about my work in Brookline, but hopefully in the questions that I'm going to answer, I'll talk about my work in Brookline, of which I am very proud. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. We are going to get started with our pre-selected questions from the Planning Committee, and we're beginning with Helen. As a member of the school committee, what would you do to achieve a sustainable budget?
That's a very good question. I think we need to start with why we're having problems with our budget presently. Okay, thank you. Can everybody hear me? Okay, great. You can't hear me. Up a little louder. Great. To understand the budget, I think I'd like to do a little bit of town budgeting 101, and just so that you understand how we get to where we are. You know, most of our money for the town comes from real estate taxes. Some come from the state, some comes from the federal government, but most of it is, the greater majority is from the residents. We can only raise taxes 2.5%. Our costs, you know, as you all know, inflation is higher than 2.5%. Our healthcare costs this year went up 11.5%. And the town has been very generous with the schools. I'm not, you know, there's certainly no complaint on that part. But when we look at the structure of how our finances are, and our contractual obligations, which have gone up to 0.75%. So there's a lot of pieces that go into the budget. And if you look around at other communities, everybody is facing budget gaps for next year. It's not just Brookline. Newton has a $14 million gap. So does Milton has, I think, an $6 million, something like that. So it's not like we're alone in this. The state also is giving us less money this year. So it's become the perfect storm where, you know, everything is closing in and there's just not enough money to do the things that people in Brookline expect from a Brookline education. You know, about every 3 to 4 years we have an override. And I know that's hard on seniors. That's not something that's an easy thing to do, but.
That's all the time.
Okay.
The next one is Bob Weintraub, and this is about what you plan to do in this role if you are elected to achieve a sustainable budget.
Say that. I'm sorry. I thought I was going to ask a budget question. Say that one more time.
Same question.
Achieving a sustainable budget.
Oh, say okay. Yeah, as everybody knows, as Helen explained, there's a structural deficit after Proposition 2.5 back in 1981, and we have to be creative and skillful to deal with that fiscal condition. I personally have had many years of working with tough budgets. At the high school, I managed a budget of over $30 million every year. I served on the superintendent's senior cabinet, where many of the decisions having to do with the fiscal situation and policy decisions were made. And I've had experience dealing with serious fiscal problems. Early in my tenure, we had about a $500,000 problem at the high school that they said we had to cut as part of the system cut. And in consultation with my senior administrative team and Jim Walsh, the superintendent, we decided to get into some good trouble, and we transformed the 60-year-old house administrative structure into a dean structure. We had 4 house masters, 4 house teachers, 4 house secretaries. We changed that into a dean's system with 2 deans, 2 dean secretaries, and 1 associate dean. And we saved about $500,000 with that move. And at the same time, I required every administrator in the school, including me, to teach at least one class, and that saved another $200,000. And so as a result of cutting more than we had to, I was able to hire a new social worker and a violence and drug prevention coordinator. So I was proud of that creative budgeting that we did. Going forward, we have to deal with these difficult budget situations. I am a very strong proponent of devoting our finances to the schoolhouse. I think the return on investment, when you invest in teachers, paras, counselors, social workers, and school leaders, you get a huge return on your investment, as opposed to investing in the central office. Thank you.
Dana, you're next. Donna, sorry.
It's okay. Okay, can everyone hear me? Okay, amazing. So Brookline, like many districts, is facing a structural deficit, and it's a critical issue that needs to be addressed. I think first we need to ensure that our budget processes are transparent and they reflect the priorities of the community. And I think including the entire community in these conversations is really important. We should look for ways to increase efficiencies in how we allocate resources without sacrificing the quality of education. I fully agree with Dr. Bob that we need to stay away from classroom-facing cuts. We need to ensure that we're making data-driven decisions. So for our various investments, we need to ensure that we are making cuts where they can be made, that we're using data to determine what's working, what isn't working, that we have clear goals for some of our investments, and that they have demonstrated classroom impact. I think another part of managing the budget has to do with relationship building and community conversations. I think it's important to engage all stakeholders to explore solutions that are sustainable. I think we need to start looking at lots of different options. We're no longer in a situation where we have the privilege of saying no to anything without exploring it and doing our due diligence. I've heard a lot about renting parking spaces or renting classroom space, and some other revenue generating ideas. So I think while Brookline has a reputation for prioritizing educational excellence, we also have to recognize the importance of fiscal responsibility, and that means adhering to a long-term financial strategy that ensures our schools are sustainable. And I'll just end with saying that I'm very much looking forward to the results of the audit that are coming out in the next month and a half, and hopefully that'll give us some real hard guidance on what to do next.
I guess I'll do it this way. Thank you for the question. I ran, as I said, a $60 million organization during a pandemic, an organization that had, much like the Brookline schools, a combination of city, state, and federal money. That like now is a very uncertain time in Washington and elsewhere for steering a ship. So I bring some experience to the table on this. I would recommend that we follow the BFAC guidelines. BFAC, the report came out in 2020, and it unfortunately didn't get a lot of play at the time because of the pandemic. But one key piece in there is that the school committee, the select board, and the advisory committee meet at least 4 times a year to get together so that we're not just getting together once a year when we're looking at our allocations, to reflect on where we are, how we're spending our money, and to move forward together as a town. I think that piece is critical. Sometimes people think of us in a silo apart from the town, and we're a part of the town and part of all of you. So that to me is critical, that we have a better ongoing communication with our town partners, both in the select board, the advisory committee, and with the public. I echo what others have said about focusing on the classroom. And if you look at what I voted on in this budget cycle in terms of cutting and keeping, that's reflected in my actual votes to ensure that we prioritize educators and student-facing programs, and that we look to central admin for our cuts.
Thank you so much. Excluding budgetary constraints, what is the biggest challenge facing the public schools of Brookline? And as a member of the school committee, how would you tackle that? Not budgetary related, what is the next biggest issue that is facing the public schools of Brookline? And this time we are going to start with Bob.
Thank you very much. Leadership matters in any organization. And I served 23 years in the Brookline Public Schools, and there was tremendous stability in leadership. I was fortunate to work with a legendary superintendent, James Walsh, and also another longtime superintendent, Bill Lupini. And my colleagues in the schoolhouse, Tom Cavanaugh at the Baker School, Barbara Shea at the Lincoln School, Carol Schraft in the Driscoll School, I can go on and on, Jim Smith at Lawrence. Everybody who came here, first of all, we were incredibly honored to serve in the Lighthouse School District. And everybody who came here stayed here. The leadership in the central office stayed here. Peter Rowe, who was the business and finance director in our public school, stayed here for 25 years. Today, we've had a revolving door of leadership both at the schoolhouse and at the central office. And it's devastating in terms of continuity and in terms of organic problem solving. And until we have stability and strong leadership, particularly in the central office, where I think we've had 7 superintendents in 12 years, 11 years. We've had 5 human resource directors in 5 years. We've had 6 directors of teaching and learning in 5 years. You understand, when new people come in, they have their new agenda, and the continuity is destroyed. So we have to establish stability and leadership in the system that will ultimately gain the trust of this community. Because I don't believe that under today's circumstances, with the lack of trust that this community has in our schools, unfortunately, that any override's going to pass, even if it's a critical need. So that's my analysis of what's going on in the public school today, and that's the kind of change that we need. And I will work really hard to make sure that we attract great people and keep great people. Thank you.
Donna, next.
Oh, thank you. So I'm going to take a slightly different approach to answering this question. There is an issue that's on my mind a lot that sort of exemplifies why it's important that we address all of our challenges at the moment. To the next year and a half, I think there is likely going to be a teacher's strike on the horizon. We have a teachers union that is highly politicized and has been very clear and upfront about their goals of reversing the illegality of strikes in Massachusetts. We've seen them start to trial the strikes in different communities nearby, in Brookline a couple of years ago, and then in Newton and Gloucester with longer strikes. So when I think about everything that we're challenged with in Brookline right now, and I think about a potential strike, I think about the fact that we have about a year and a half of runway to address it, which is amazing that we have this crystal ball to look down the road. And I certainly think there are issues like leadership, which is going to be a tremendous factor if we want to navigate any kind of strike scenario or any difficulty. So addressing leadership, ensuring we have somebody really strong at the helm and a strong school committee is important. I think we need to make sure that we're cleaning up our budget and going through it with a fine-tooth comb, because we're going to need every single penny we have so that we can negotiate in good faith with our educators. And I think we need to restore a lot of trust with our stakeholders. That means community groups, parent groups, ensuring we have a strong relationship with the town. And if we sort of effectively address each of those strategically and again with good faith. I think I don't know. I see the lighthouse coming back, Bob.
Let's light it up.
Yes. Thank you.
Valerie, you are next.
Thank you. I agree with Bob on leadership. We, at the moment, have several interim deputy superintendents, principals, and other leaders in the district. And the deputy superintendent for OSS, for student services, is a school committee hire. So that's one that we will directly impact. We have an interim serving currently through the end of the year. So that's certainly on the horizon. And along with these other school-based leadership positions are critical. And they go to all the other issues that we've been talking about. They go to community trust. They go to collaboration. They go to transparency. They go to our ability to talk about the issues that are challenging, both on the fifth floor, so with central administration, and with how our schools are operating. So for me, that leadership is key. We need that leadership in order to have these negotiations. I served on the negotiations committee for our 6 years of contracts that we settled 3 years ago, and look forward to serving on that subcommittee again if reelected. But leadership to me is paramount, both at the central office, the schoolhouse, and the school committee.
I'm going to try and see if we don't. Okay. Can you hear me? I'm really sorry. Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay, good. So I agree with all three candidates here about leadership, about union negotiations, and about SPED costs. All of those issues are issues that we are facing, but it's also issues that I've faced in the past, and I've dealt with them in many ways, whether it's leadership. One of the things that people should know that today people don't stay in their jobs very long. 3 and 4 years is about the max for most superintendents across the state. We have been lucky that we have had people who stayed long term, like Jim Walsh, like Bill Lupini. And I'm hoping that we can find somebody who wants to, who will stay that length, because all the leadership needs to be that kind of strong stability. Then comes down to the schoolhouse, to everybody, and people know, who's in charge. In terms of negotiations, I was involved with negotiations when we almost went out on strike about 20 years ago. And it was, thank God, that Belmont went out on strike first and Brookline decided to negotiate, and we came to the table and got a contract. I think it's going to be hard. We do pay our teachers well, but there's always another district that pays more, and that's what negotiations are about. The other piece I think we're going to have to tackle, and this is a difficult one, our special education costs are now about 39% of our budget, and the number of students is about 18%. And so we need to look at those numbers and see what can we do more efficiently. How can we provide more services, which we do already. We do quite a bit of in-house programming that keeps children in Brookline as opposed to out-of-district placements.
All right, we are transitioning to audience questions. And while you think about what you want to ask this very capable and competent panel, I'm going to start with the one question that we received in advance. And as a reminder, they will have 90 seconds, which is 30 seconds less to answer these questions. So we're turning up the heat in here. Why is it that Brookline Public students do not get information about vocational or technical education opportunities from their guidance counselors? Great high schools like Blue Hills Regional, Minuteman Regional, and Norfolk Aggie are available choices to all Brookline Public School students. How are the school committee candidates here today going to change this huge oversight beginning when our public school students leave middle school? And the first person answering that question is Helen?
It's a good question. I think there's two answers to it. One, the distance to those schools usually precludes kids from going. That only the students who are truly interested in vocational education will go. And I'm actually very proud of what we do offer at the high school and continue to expand on. So right now, we just approved this year a class in the trades in electricity. It's an introduction class to learn about electricity, about plumbing, and about carpentry, etc., all the different construction trades. In addition, we have a whole slew of courses at the high school, from engineering by design to the cafe where there's it's a restaurant that the students run. All of them providing all sorts of skills that students need in vocations. I think that, you know, maybe we probably could do a better job of advertising the vocational schools, but for the most part, most students want to stay here in Brookline.
The next person answering this question is Valerie.
Thank you, Devin. We do need to do a better job of this. I have now 2 ninth graders, and there are lots and lots of programs that we do for rising ninth grade families. There are tremendous programming opportunities to understand what's going on at the high school, both academically, socially, athletically, special ed programs, lots and lots of social events for both families and students. I do think it's a gap that we don't have at least a night like that for families to hear about these other options. As we are well into the 21st century at this point, we're seeing that cost of college education has gone up tremendously, and that perhaps it's not the route for anyone. So I do think that we need to do a better job for those middle schoolers so that they and their families are hearing about the options.
Oh, thank you so much. I completely agree with Val. I have an 11th grader, and he really would have benefited from learning more about different technical and vocational options in the Boston area. I think that what I would specifically say about how to improve access to those programs would be to take a deeper dive into the process by which our guidance counselors, who are predominantly the people who are shepherding our children from 8th to 9th grade into class selections. I would suggest that we do a deeper dive with guidance counselors or with our schools to understand exactly what is happening during that process when they're making recommendations to rising 9th graders. I think we would benefit from that understanding for many different reasons, but certainly that would help us identify where there are opportunities to improve marketing and access to some of those programs, which are incredibly vital. So thank you for the question, whoever submitted it.
Yes, thank you. Very important question. When I last looked, I think Brookline, the town of Brookline, the community of Brookline was ranked as the second smartest community in the country, next to Bethesda, Maryland. So when you have a community that's lots of PhDs and lots of master's degree graduates, you have a college-going culture that is very powerful. And that's not a bad thing. But on the other hand, there are a number of kids who perhaps are best served by not going to college and going to a vocational school, community college that trains them in the trades. One of my mantras as the head of Brookline High was, each kid needs a dignified next step. A dignified next step means different things to different students, depending upon their interests, their talents, their abilities. And so I think that considering the earnings that you can make in the trades today, my son-in-law is an automotive technician, makes a lot of money, and he loves what he does. I think that we have to, I think what Donna was saying about the guidance counselors, I think to provide a dignified next step for every kid, that includes the possibility that you don't go to college and you move toward training in the trades, which will be economically beneficial for you and perhaps inspirational to you because those are your talents. So I think it's really an important topic.
Thank you. All right. Who has our first audience question? Please raise your hand. We're going to go right up here. Janet will bring you the microphone, and you'll have 1 minute to ask your question. Yeah.
Correctly.
Yes.
Now, next month I will be 43 years in Brookline, and through the years, I have unfortunately heard stories of inequity, racism, sexism, et cetera, et cetera. Recently, the Office of Equity and Equality, and please correct me if I've given it the incorrect name, was, pardon me? Thank you. Office of Educational Equity was closed. My question is, what will you do as a school board member to reopen it? And if you feel that it shouldn't be reopened, would you tell us why and how the system should change?
We're going to start with Valerie and then move down the line.
Thank you. I was one of the votes to eliminate the Office of Educational Equity, and it's not because I don't care about equity. In fact, I deeply care about equity. I've been a civil rights attorney for over 2 decades. But the reason I voted to eliminate it was because we were facing an $8.2 million gap, and I prioritize equity in the classroom over the 5th floor. That's what it comes down to. I voted not to eliminate our learning center teachers. I voted to keep our math specialists. I want to make sure that we have the calculus project, that we have the tutorial programs, that we're supporting all of those programs that are student facing first, so that we are ensuring that that level of equity is available to students, that we have our affinity spaces, that we are providing all of that support in the classroom before we take any cut there.
Thank you so much for the question. I'd also love to hear more about your experience in Brookline over the past couple of decades. I'll say I agree with Valerie. I think the community spoke loud and clear about keeping cuts away from the classrooms. And I'll just remind this group that the superintendent proposed the cuts, and the next central office cut, or the only available central office cut that he made at that point, was the Office of Educational Equity. So the school committee can only vote on what's presented to them. Separately, I'll say that I think the equity work still needs to take place and does take place in our classrooms. Val mentioned some of the programs. We have other programs, Project Discovery, the African American and Latino Scholars Program, and then other programs that aren't traditionally labeled equity programs, but for example, having the classroom aides in 1st grade, I think have massive implications for all students. We have child study teams in our K-3s, which are multidisciplinary teams of educators that work to support students that are struggling. And I think it's really important that we continue investing in those. Some of them have been underinvested for many years. I also think in terms of impact and investment, it's important to evaluate some of these central office initiatives against classroom-based initiatives so that we're making, again, data-driven decisions.
Helen, you're up.
Thank you for the question. I, along with Val, had one of the hardest votes to make to cut that office. It was not one that I wanted to make. However, when I thought about the amount that we had to cut, it made sense that an administrative cut versus a programmatic cut was much more important. To add on to what everybody else has said here, I think one of our biggest investments that we make in terms of equity is our early education program, BEEP, where we take 40 children on scholarship from the housing developments and have them for 2 years to give them a real head start, not just a head start, in terms of their learning. And I think that's a critical thing that we do in terms of equity, in addition to Steps to Success. I'm not sure if people are familiar with the program, but it's a program that started with a grant and then became part of the school system, where we have during school, after school, and out of school time, tutors and homework centers that help the students, mostly from housing, but also low-income other Brookline students, be able to get all sorts of enhancements and what's the word I'm looking for right now? Well, support, but more than support, in all sorts of activities, just to enlarge their scope of where they go to. They're taken to college tours, and this program
You're all
actually
set, Helen. Thank you so much. Bob?
Yeah, thank you.
continues.
I've-
Continues after.
I've dedicated my professional life to the practice of educational equity. I have one of my strongest endorsers is Janae Utaro, the former director of the Office of Educational Equity in Brookline. She knows me well. We worked for many years at the high school developing programs that are all about educational equity. As I said before, the return on investment, especially for programs about educational equity, the return on investment is so much more powerful at the schoolhouse than it is at the central office. And so, we had an $8 million deficit, and who wants to cut programs? But when you have to make those tough decisions, those tough decisions need to be made. What I will say to you is that over my many years of leadership at Brookline High School, we addressed educational equity in a very powerful way. We developed the Calculus Project. We developed the African American Latina Scholars Program, the tutorial program, all of which launched kids of color, historically underachieving kids, into high-powered academic programs. And if you look at data, if you want to look at data from the time that we created some of those programs, the whole school academic profile increased dramatically, and the gaps between the higher achieving and historically lower achieving kids decreased tremendously, from a gap of 45, 50 points to, when I left, 10, 11 points. And so what I'm saying loudly is, you invest in the schoolhouse and you demand that educational equity practices
Thank you,
Uh,
happen
Bob.
there.
We are moving on to our next audience question.
Arthur Conquest. Um, I would like to propose that there be some kind of Black, Latino, minority report at the end of every year that will tell us exactly where and how Black and Latino students are doing in the Brookline Public Schools, from elementary school to the high school, and make that data public. And I want to know whether or not you would agree to have such a report made at the end of each year.
Valerie, you're going to start us off.
Thank you for the question, Arthur. So one of the first things that we did when I was DIJ chair was to add a report that comes annually on how our hiring and retention are for educators of color. So that's one piece that I also think is critical, in addition to our student success, because studies and show over and over that if you have someone who looks like you in front of you, you are much more likely to engage and learn. So that's a critical piece to those student achievements. We certainly get that data through the MCAS in terms of how students are doing, and that data gets sliced for students of color, students with disabilities, students who are English language learners, and those who have any combination of those identities. So I support that, and to the extent that we can figure out a data metric or a dashboard that is additional to an MCAS score that shows achievement, grades, or however we want to do that, I would support that as well.
We'll go right down the line, Donna.
Oh, thank you. I can't see Arthur, but I want to say thank you so much for the question. No, it's okay. Sit down. I want to say thank you for the question, but I also want to say directly answer yes, I would support that. I would also love if when we're done here, if we can talk a little bit more about what you would want to see in the report or what you would envision in that report. It's really important to me that in addition to looking at the data, that we're bringing in student voices, which we often, I think, tend to neglect. I would love to see some version of surveys directly to students included in that. But I think there is a lot of work to do in Brookline around racial inequity. And I think that some of that also, we have to start with having honest conversations and creating spaces for those conversations. So I think what you're proposing, for example, is a great segue into some of those conversations.
Thank you, Arthur, for the question. You know, it's interesting. I think it's yes. The answer is yes. I think we should, and I think we do things, do have reports, but they're not all in one place. So we get the MCAS results, and we hear about the gaps, and that's one piece. We also do social emotional testing to see how kids feel, if they feel belonging in Brookline or not. And we get those reports. And actually, those have been rather positive in terms of minority students feeling a sense of belonging in Brookline. But there's not just one place. I know Steps to Success every year puts out a report on how their students are doing. It's sort of bits and pieces. It needs a more structured way. The other pieces, our strategic plan is sort of based on trying to close the achievement gap, make our schools work for everyone. And the metrics for success are there, but we haven't done a good job getting that out, the information out. So I think that it's a very good suggestion that we pull it together with one report rather than people having to listen at different times and try and figure out, well, what's really happening. So thank you.
Arthur, good to see you. Helen, I'm a little surprised that you don't remember that every year in our school improvement report, we presented exactly the kind of data that Arthur has asked for. No, I just saw it last year. Hal Mason and Anthony Meyer were up there with the MCAS scores, with attendance. Anyway, let me just say, every year I went before the school committee with a end of year school improvement report, and in that report we had disaggregated data on exactly what you're asking for, Arthur. And you probably saw some of those presentations. It's still going on. It's still good. And what the data that I referred to before in terms of the improvement of the gaps between historically underachieving kids and higher achieving kids, those gaps were described in the annual report that we gave. And those reports included student attendance, test scores, student grades, and student levels of enrollment in high school courses. And so I can look back, I have them on my computer. So, and I know that they continue to be reported. So exactly what you wanted, we did that every May, I believe, at the school committee. And you can go and I'm sure there's documentation of that. So thank you for that question. It's a very important question. It goes to the heart of dealing well with every kid in the school. And as I said, I was there for 22 years and the data improved and improved and improved. I was very proud of that work.
Thank you, Bob. All right, we're on to our third question. And if the candidates would like to trim down to just 1 minute responses, we would have time for one more question before your time is up. So just keep that in mind.
Thank you, Janet and Devin. It's great to see you, Devin. My name is Jocelyn Murphy, and my question centers on a wonderful centuries-old program that has been in Brookline for quite a while that frankly benefits this community, which I consider myself a member of, and that is the Brookline Adult and Community Education Program. It is affiliated with the Brookline Public Schools. It is largely self-supporting, but the public schools have supported it, I believe, during COVID and after COVID. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, and it would surprise me if you're not, it offers programming to children, camps in the summer, field trips, classes in art, dance, wonderful program that is only available to the community through the BASE program. Now, I understand that the school committee is going to be voting on it tonight. I believe it receives only limited support from the school system.
Okay, that's all, Jocelyn. Basically, the gist is, how are you going to vote if you're going to be there? And if you're not going to be there, how would you vote? And we're going to start with Helen.
Thank you. Thank you, Jocelyn, for that question, because it's just what I'm going to be talking about tonight at school committee. I can give a preview to you guys here. We don't really support financially except through giving free space to BASE. I will try and propose, and I don't know if my colleagues will agree, to at least keep the BASE program alive until the fall, do some looking at their finances, see if their projections are possibly not correct and that they are doing better than what's being projected, and thereby at least allowing for the summer programs for the kids, for the adults, for the seniors that they do so well, and hopefully giving them some time to figure out fundraising and making sure that they're not in deficit. We love the program. It's not that we don't want it. It's just that we can't afford to subsidize it. And I think that's where the big problem is. If the town were to possibly come in and help out BASE, that'd be great. We want them in our schools, and we enjoy. In the past, BASE was wonderful in terms of supporting the schools, and that's why we did bail them out a couple times during the last couple of years.
Bob, you're up.
Thank you very much. Jocelyn, thank you for that question. I have historically been an incredibly strong supporter of the Brookline Adult Education Program. I worked very closely with Linda Larson, the legendary leader, and actually Arthur and I did some work with the Brookline Adult Education Program, and Arthur did some extraordinary work with kids during the summer. You remember that, Arthur? And it was and BASE was housed at Brookline High. I was proud to have BASE as part of Brookline High School. And in terms of money, I agree with Helen. We're in this ridiculous fiscal strangulation. And so extraordinary programs like BASE, there's questions raised about how we can support that. And as a member of the school committee, I would do everything I can to be creative and skillful at enabling BASE to thrive and grow. Thank you.
Valerie, you're up.
Sorry. Thank you for that question, Jocelyn. I fully support BASE. I think that it provides educational opportunities for learners of all ages, and that's what we're about, in my mind, is education for all learners. It has had a tough run, like many things have since the pandemic. So I think that we need to look hard at how it's being run to make sure that we're managing sites and facilities and programming well, and that we're offering the programs that people want to have offered frequently enough, and to look at the ways that we can reduce that deficit as we go forward. But tonight I'll be voting to support BASE.
Jocelyn, thank you so much for that question, but also for elevating the issue. I mentioned this in my opening remarks, but I grew up in Brookline. My grandparents lived just a couple blocks away from us. We went to their house every day after school while my mom worked her second job. When I think about cutting programs like BASE, I think about cutting programs that my parents and my grandparents and my neighbors use, and that's a really sort of painful idea to me. We are one community. I think it's incredibly important that we continue to build connections for all town residents with our schools. I think different communities have supported our schools in so many different ways, and I think our schools sort of owe it back to them to support them in reverse. I think it is a small amount of money, and if I were on school committee, I certainly would try to identify an efficiency somewhere that would would save that program.
Okay, and a quick roll call vote. I'm going to go right down the line. Would you be yes or no, Valerie? Yes for this question. If voting, yes, yes, yeah. If it's on the chopping block.
I would 100% save
About
101% yes.
okay. Last question for our school committee candidates.
Hi, I'm Barbara. I have a first grader at Hayes. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to ask a question. I'm relatively new to the public schools in Brookline. I will say that this whole budget management process has come across as delicate at best, dysfunctional at worst, including the relationships between the school committee, the school admin, the select board, as well as, you know, the parents and other people in the community, especially including parents who don't send their kids to public schools and non-parents. What are you going to do to improve relationships within school committee, school admin, select board, the town, as well as include and engage non-parents or people who don't have kids at their public schools to make sure we don't lose that support and we get money through overrides and we get that willingness to support those kids who attend our excellent schools?
Thank you. We're going to start with Donna.
Thank you so much for that question. And I hope you're having a good experience at Hayes. So I think a lot of what we touched on tonight has to do with rebuilding some of the trust and morale in our community. Specifically, I feel strongly about opening up more opportunities for community dialogue. I look at the recent sort of the budget process has been frustrating for me too as a parent and also somebody who watches the school committee avidly. If on February 6th, when there was an announcement about the $8.2 million deficit, how amazing would it have been if there were some community forums organized by the powers that be where stakeholders could come on Zoom or in person or in this room and talk about what their priorities are and what's important to them, explaining what the budget process is or what the next steps are. Those are not heavy lifts. Those are very light lifts. Those are things that I'm used to doing through my work in the BPO. We just held a budget forum actually the other night. And I think it's important. That's an important part of the work that needs to happen and engaging the community and building more transparency. I have more ideas, but I'm gonna stop there. Thank you.
Helen, you're up.
Well, thank you. Actually, after the, we heard about the cut, there were a number of PTOs who asked us to come and talk, and I was one of the people who went to actually, I think, to every PTO that wanted to talk, trying to help to explain to them the things that we talked about here. I think that, it's interesting. I look back, when I first came on school committee, we had a $4 million deficit, but our budget was $52 million. Today it's $8 million, it's a $141 million budget. So we have been there, we will get through this, and but it's gonna be hard. It was hard back then. We cut home ec, I had to cut home ec, cut industrial arts in the elementary school and music. And those were not easy cuts at that time. It's hard. When there's not enough money to go around, it's hard for everybody. And we have to do the best that we can and make sure people understand. And that's thank you all for being here and listening.
Bob, you're up.
Yeah, thank you. As I've said, excuse me, as I've said over and over again, oh my God. As I've said over and over again, leadership is incredibly important. When we look at the business and finance department up at central office, the turnover there over the last 5, 6, 7 years has been ridiculous. And that's one of the reasons that we've lost trust in the school department and the school system. One of the things I did when I was headmaster at Brookline High was every spring we would go out to every elementary school and we'd explain what the opportunities were for the kids who were going to come up to Brookline High School. And one of the things I said was, listen, I want 100% market share in this community for Brookline High School. And the reason I'm not kidding when I say that The reason I say that is because I know there's plenty of people who have resources that can send your kids to private school, and I respect that. But what I'm saying is the experience in a private school and experience at Brookline High is considerably different. The pathway through a private school where you have a much more narrow diversity of people versus going through Brookline High where you interact with everybody in the world is one of our great selling points, in addition to its very strong academic program and its social emotional work that we do with kids who need that kind of work. So leadership has to get better. Stability has to return to the central office and to the schoolhouses, and then you will see a difference.
Valerie, you're going to take us home.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Devin. So
Thank you, Ellen.
we need to get out in the community, but not just the PTOs. Those are critical constituencies for us to speak to, but 18% of Brookline are current PSB parents. So 82% of our community is currently not getting touched in the ways that we need to talk about budget, but also other issues that are going on in the schools, our programs, any changes in leadership, things like that. We need to get out into the communities and also into the communities that are more marginalized. So in our public housing and our folks who don't speak English as a first language. We need to also make sure that we're talking to folks not just when there's a budget crisis, but going through the years when there isn't a budget crisis about what we're doing well, what we need to improve on, so that there's a conversation that happens by and among community members, school committee members, select board members, advisory committee, and all of the other wonderful committees and commissions in town. So that's what I would suggest.
Thank you. That is it for our audience questions. I'm going to have everyone take a drink of water and a deep breath because you're about to deliver your closing remarks. You will each have 1 minute to sell to this audience why you deserve their vote. And we're going to start with Bob.
1 minute. Not famous for 1 minute. I'm a unique candidate. I've had almost 40 years of experience in the trenches of the public schools. I am very familiar and experienced with the key problem issues that we have in Brookline, having to do with the revolving door of leadership, having to do with the budget, and also having to do with finding the academic center of gravity for all kids in our schools. I love Brookline, been here for a really long time. The kids grew up here, went to Driscoll School, went to the high school. I love the schools. When I came here, it was a lighthouse district, and I want to help, and I want to be in the room where it's happening, which is on the 5th floor in the James Walsh School Committee room. I would appreciate your vote. Thank you very much.
Helen?
Thank you. I'm just going to go back to the other question for a minute because I was remembering that Janet Gelbart had invited both Suzanne Federspiel and myself to talk with seniors about the schools. It was a couple years ago. And I'm sorry that we haven't continued that because I think that's an important conversation to have so that people understand what we're doing. You know, and the good, the bad, and I guess the ugly too, but mostly the good. So that's something that I would continue to do. I think experience matters. My experience on the school committee gives me a sense of perspective, but also of hope. We've been through a lot. We can meet the challenges of now, and I hope I can continue to be that voice of experience and hope in this fraught and often frustrating moment that there's hope out there, you know, even with what's happening above us and in other areas of the world, the country, etc. Our children and teachers need strong and stable schools.
Thank you,
and
Helen.
leadership.
Donna, you're up.
And I asked for your vote.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay. So first of all, I want to say thank you to each and every one of you for coming out tonight and taking time to listen to us. I want to say that I truly value your opinion, your insights, your input. What you have kids in the school, your community, one community, we have to support one another. I think right now the public is looking for a school committee that asks more questions and gets more answers, works with greater intention and fiscal responsibility. We all value our schools deeply, but there are clear frustrations and structural issues that need to be addressed. We need decisive, transparent, and thoughtful leadership on the school committee. We need to ask hard questions, even when it's uncomfortable, and we need to challenge the status quo when it's not serving our students. We need to communicate clearly, insist on transparency, not just in our fiscal decisions, but in all aspects of how we operate. And we need to have open, honest conversations with our stakeholders, admit when we make mistakes, and work together to fix them. I hope to earn your support on Tuesday, May 6th. If you have thoughts, questions.
Thank you, Donna.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I will be brief. We have to be brief. In my over 20 years as a civil rights attorney and a nonprofit leader, I think I'm the only candidate who has managed over $60 million budget and worked in local, state, and federal government. So I come to this with experience that I think translates well into both providing educational excellence for students regardless of their ethnicity, their race, their religion, their sexual orientation, or gender identity. And thank you for the 30 seconds. I want to make sure that we do that with fiscal responsibility and accountability and community input and community collaboration. So I ask for your vote on May 6th or before May 6th. Thank you.
Yes, please give a round of applause for all of these candidates. It is a brave time for you to run for office, and we appreciate that. You got places to be. Please, talk to your adoring public at the conclusion of this event, which is at 6 o'clock. And I'm going to ask the select board candidates to come right up so we can keep this show on the road. Don't go anywhere if you're interested in the select board race. Oh, yes, of course. Great job. We're about to transition to my personal favorite elected body, which is the select board. This is a unique form of government that Brookline has, especially for a community that is so large, to still be governed this way with the power closest to the people, which is what we like here in Massachusetts especially. And the rules are not changing. So everything that you just saw is going to play out again with slightly different questions and probably very different answers. I am going to remind people that there is one open select board seat, and there are three candidates who are running. 3 candidates are running for one seat. We love to see a contested race. This is my final reminder to turn off your cell phones. I know we are addicted. I know that there is a whole computer in your pocket, and that is hard to look away from. But if everyone could silence their cell phones or leave, that would be great. I'm also going to remind the candidates that we should turn off our microphones in between our answers so that we reduce the level of feedback. And we are going to start with your 2-minute elevator pitches. Carlos.
Well, thank you everybody for coming tonight. Thank you to Brookline CAN and the League of Women Voters. Welcome to Emily Williams as a new director. I know Ruth Ann Dobik had a huge history here, so you have some big shoes to fill. Anyway, a little bit about me. I grew up in Spain and moved to the U.S. when I was 17. I came to study architecture at Cornell, and then I did my master's here at MIT. Then after that, I did an internship. I met my wife, and about 20 years ago, we moved to Brookline. When my son was born 13 years ago, Brookline became our home, and Runco is school. I've been listening to the school committee, so I think it's just went out of mind. In 2019, I became a U.S. citizen, and I was able to participate more fully civically in town. I was appointed to the advisory committee, which is the finance committee, and several other zoning committees. This has allowed me to get some experience and understand how the town works from the inside. And as a select board member, I want to focus on 3 items: housing affordability, climate sustainability, and investment in our municipal services and infrastructure. But all of them, we must achieve this while ensuring affordability, because Brookline has become increasingly unaffordable and is pushing out the middle class. So we have to, and seniors on fixed income. So we have to work together to increase the affordability in our town.
Okay. Michael, you're up.
Gonna stand. Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Rubenstein. I'm running for Select Board. I want to thank Brookline CAN and the League of Women Voters for hosting us today in this forum. My wife and I moved to Brookline 32 years ago. We came here to raise a family. We fell in love with the excellent schools, the open spaces and parks, the compact walkable neighborhoods. We raised our 2 children here. They are 29 and 26 and doing amazing things in the world. Brookline is a wonderful place to live, but it also has its challenges. Housing is very expensive for people to find. The cost of living in Brookline is very expensive, and the town services that we all need and expect are underfunded. You add to that, of course, a climate crisis that we are facing and the chaos to our central government, and Brookline is challenged indeed. I believe I have a set of skills and experience from a 25-year business career, followed by 10 years of public service, and I am looking to put those skills and expertise to use on the Select Board. In 1985, my brother and I founded a software company, and we sold that business in 2011. When we sold it, we had almost 400 people working for us. We were managing large budgets. We were establishing goals. We were delivering results. And we were watching our finances closely every single year in good times and bad. Since then, I've been doing public service work in healthcare and in housing and in education. I am now looking to add all of those services and all of those skills to work on the Select Board. Thank you all very much, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thank you. Liz, you're up.
Thank you. Okay. Turn up the volume. That one's on, I think. Can you hear me? It's very loud in my ears, so woo. Hi, thanks for having us here, and thanks for being here. My name is Liz Linder. I am running for Select Board, and it's interesting you were talking about your business experience. I realized I've had 35 years of running a small business of varying size, and also we do public service. This feels so loud to me. Is that correct? That felt a little extreme, right? Phew. I was like, what's going on? So this town has been my home and the home of my photography business for about half of the time I've been a photographer, about over 20 years. I was initially drawn to Brookline for the vibrant live-work potential, and it is exactly that. And as a candidate, the perspective I bring to the Select Board is unique because I am in the thick of it. I'm a middle-class, independent small business and resident, and I am in danger of being pushed out of Brookline. I'm not going to let that happen now. I'm a very hard worker, and I want to solve some of these problems so that we can all stay here and age in place. In between the debates around luxury housing and deed-restricted housing and who our roads serve, my positions are formed from the perspective of someone most affected by them. My condo in Brookline Village is a 4-story walk-up, one of the earliest examples of mixed-use housing. My experience as both resident and business owner is very personal, and I see the many challenges facing us, from transportation to housing to green space to balancing so many competing needs in a small space. I've worked with the Brookline Community Foundation, Brookline Housing Authority, Arts Brookline. I've been to the Senior Center with my dog Enzo and the libraries for programs that help with literacy and loneliness. I've been involved in the town through committees for a number of years, past decade, as an abutter to the Kent Station Street Housing Affordable Housing Project, other transportation committees, all the way through the comprehensive plan. And I know from experience how community involvement is so important in how we make decisions so that people are heard. I've spent my career supporting less visible populations and individuals to give them
Thank
more
you, Liz.
presence.
That's all.
Thank you, and
so
I will do that
much.
for you too.
We are moving on to our pre-selected questions from the committee who planned this event. I will have you, Liz, give that microphone to Michael, who will answer first. We are all aware of the many challenges that the town is facing. If you could do only one thing during your tenure on the select board, what would it be, and how are you planning to achieve it?
If I could do only one thing, what I would do is I would look at all of the opportunities that we have for growth within our community, and I would work with all of the stakeholders involved in all of those opportunities to identify the growth that we need so that we can expand our tax base and not continue to burden existing residents with increasing property taxes from year after year. I believe that there are opportunities that have been established in the many plans that have been created by the boards and commissions within Brookline, and it is going to take leadership from the select board in order to identify the barriers and actually find the solutions to turn those plans into reality.
Great. I'll have you pass that right over to Liz.
Thank you. So one thing, just one thing, involves a lot of balance in the small business community and the commercial community with the residents. I see that this town functions really well when the small business districts function well, and I want to see these districts thriving. I want to see them walkable. I want to see independent businesses making it such that, you know, if you do live in a mixed use building, you can walk to get as many of your goods and services as possible. If you do not, you have a place to put your car if you go to those business districts. I find that I never thought I would be a parking advocate, actually. I'm such a walking, biking lover. But we need to figure out the balance between parking and walkable streets and mixed use development. We have to do it or it doesn't work because we still use cars. Thank you.
So the one thing I would focus is how to make this town more affordable. We cannot rely on continual overrides as a way of financing the town. One day they'll just won't pass, and then when that happens, we're going to have a cliff. And the only way to do that, to make the town more affordable, is to expand the tax base, to expand the commercial tax base, because that's the one that is taxed at a higher rate and uses less town services. And that's done through smart growth. There are a lot of places where you can add commercial development, and that will increase the tax base, and then it distributes or lessens the impact on the residential tax rate, increases the amount of money that is available for budgeting, and then that would also reduce the pressure on the fiscal pressure that we have. Smart growth is not easy. But we can do it in town. We have been starting to look at it through the comprehensive plan and through some of the zoning committees, like Chestnut Hill West, which I'm part of, and Lower Wollaston Street. The biggest, I would say, the biggest thing that we need to do when we're looking at smart growth is to make sure that we have neighborhood buy-in, or that the neighborhood understands why we need the growth that we need, or what we're trying to propose, and how that neighborhood growth, or how that smart growth is compatible with the neighborhood itself.
Great. Residents have expressed frustration when well-organized special interest groups drown out their voice. what specific things would you do as a member of the select board to make sure that feedback from all constituencies is reflected in the select board decision making? And we're going to start with Liz.
Is this thing still on? Yes, right? Okay. So um, this connects with the last question and where I was going, which is we really need to balance the reality of what's happening in our neighborhoods with the aspirations that we have as a community. And, you know, I have done some of this work. I have gotten, first of all, I'm on the comprehensive plan. So that is, we want to hear from the people in the community what you're looking at and what you want to see happen so that we can, you know, materialize this in the next 15 years. Number one. Number two, I've gotten on the Washington Street Complete Streets project. I love the idea of having safe bike lanes. So let me just say that. I used to be an avid biker. I'm scared to bike here. My job relies on me being whole. And no, it's real. I mean, it's a scary thing. But so I want to see balance there. I got 2 parking studies worked into the Washington Streets Complete Streets plan. One in the commercial district, Washington Square, and the other one in Brookline Village. And in those studies, we've already passed the 25% design process. But what I want to see is robust community engagement from the business owners, from abutters, from people who care about what's happening in these neighborhoods, so we can find solutions so that we can have a great project. We have to find solutions or we cannot, you know, it's just not going to work. They're complicated areas, and, you know, get engaged. That's the first thing.
Okay.
I'll stop there.
Great. Michael, you're up.
So one of the reasons I particularly enjoy this question is because sometimes one person's special interest group is another person's strong advocate for what I want. So you can actually be on both sides of this challenge. And I think that the right answer from the select board really focuses on 2 concepts. One is transparency, and the other is accountability. When the select board makes decisions or when we take votes, I think it is on the select board themselves to be able to explain why they are making the decisions that they are, irrespective of the voices that are providing input. They clearly need to be taking input from a wide variety of perspectives, but it is really the select board's responsibility to be able to make the decisions and then to be able to communicate those decisions to the community so that the community can then turn around and say, yes, we agree, we support you with your votes, with our votes, or we do not. And you know, that combination of transparency and accountability at the select board level is something that I think we need to bring forward further.
All right, Carlos.
So there are many ways of increasing the views of the different aspects of groups in town. One of them is also by appointing, the select board has, one of the authorities it has is to appoint people to the different committees. And I think the select board needs to make sure that when they're appointing people, either, you know, to the transportation board or to zoning committees or any of the committees that they appoint to, that those committees don't end up being loaded on one side versus the other one. That they're more that they make sure that all the voices of town have representation there, and that's not the case in some of the committees or boards that we have. Once you've established that, I think transparency and communication is the most important part, where you have to, when you're having community meetings and forums and all kinds of input gathering, that you make sure that all the groups that are in town get access to those, and that they also show up. And if they don't show up, that you go and look for them. Because, for example, with the Complete Streets of Washington Square, Washington Street, I walked down a lot of the businesses down on Brookline Village, and I asked them, well, "What do you think about the project?" And they said, "We don't really feel like we're included if we don't, we don't live here, we don't vote here. So if we don't like it, we'll just move our business to another town. We're fine with that." Or they also say that they didn't know about the meetings or that they didn't hear about the meetings. So there definitely is a gap somewhere that needs to be fixed. And maybe it's a language problem. Maybe it's a time problem.
Thank you,
schedule
Carlos. Those were our questions from the committee, and we are now transitioning to audience questions. We did have one submitted in advance, but that person is with us in person. So we are going to let her go first, and then you'll raise your hand, and Janet will come see you. Please introduce yourself and ask your question. You have 1 minute.
Fran Perler, Council on Aging member and town meeting member P8. So one of the things we face here at the Senior Center through the years is, what is your thoughts on allowing seniors to age in place and how they can do that most efficiently? There have been certain suggestions that they should go to senior housing, which doesn't exist. So could you talk about seniors aging in place?
Carlos, you're up.
Thank you, Fran. Thank you for that question. My mother is 86 now, and she's very lucky that she can age in place at home. And my sister is in Spain helping her through the daily life as she ages. And I think that's one option that we have to look at is if people are, say for example, they're in a single family, but the house is too big, they want to downsize, they want to be able to stay in their home, but not in the full home. One option that there is now is the ADU, the accessory dwelling unit, where you build an apartment almost at your home, and then you can move into the apartment and rent the house, or you can rent the house. Stay in the house and rent the apartment, and that allows you to give you some income either way, depending on how much space there is. There's also the more sort of structured way, which is there are some senior housing deed-restricted options in Brookline, and one of them is actually being built right now at Hammond Street and Route 9. But those are going to be more expensive than the ADU option. So that's just the beginning, but there's still a lot of work that we have to do towards making sure that whoever wants to stay in Brookline can stay in Brookline, no matter what the age is.
Liz, you're up.
Thank you. So those are all really good points. And, the first part of the question was, what are our thoughts? What is the, I want to age in place here. I would imagine most people living here want to age in place. So what can we do to make that happen? Aside from some of the things that Carlos mentioned, we're looking at a real estate abatement tax that I understand. I think I saw John Van Scoyac here earlier. Is he here? So did you just write? You and Paul Warren, I think, put an amendment into the that warrant article so that the fees could get split between the housing authority and the general fund, or the housing fund and the general fund. So something like that has a really that has exemptions put in place for people on fixed incomes and thresholds so that we favor seniors would be really helpful. Commercial development, obviously, building smaller units so that there's somewhere to downsize. And hold on a second, it's going out of my head as I'm looking at 30 seconds left. The local preference, I think we need to rebalance that, because people who've been living here for their, the bulk of their adult lives, who know their roots, have routines, have, community here, need to be able to stay here, and they need to have more options to stay here. So we need to open up the local preference. We need to look at rebalancing that so it favors seniors who already live here. Thank you.
Okay, Michael, it's you.
So thank you for that question. I think the first important value that we have to think about is that seniors are not a monolith, so there is not a single solution or 2 or 3 solutions that are going to apply to everybody. Everybody has different circumstances. Everybody has different levels of resources. Everybody has different desires for what they actually want. Some people want to be in larger communities. Some people want to age in place in their own homes. And all of those options are legitimate and need to be valued. I have talked a lot about the fact that we need more housing options within the town, not only for young professionals and families, but also for seniors. The ADU option is obviously one way to generate income that can allow somebody to age in their homes, but it doesn't work in all cases. My mother, unlike yours, lives in an independent living facility in California. She's 89 years old. It's graded care, all the way up to different levels of care, and that was the choice that worked out for her. But the overriding thought, to answer your question, is that we need more options, and we should be able to value and respect the choices that individuals want to make in how they age within our community.
Thank you, Michael. We are taking our next audience question. There's one right here. Janet is going to hand that off.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Alan Shepro. I've been in Brookline now for about 40 years. There are some people in this room who will tell me I'm not very politically correct, and my wife will tell me I have no filter. Thanks, Fran. Fran's not my wife. But I have something, Carlos, that you just said, and that's to raise taxes on businesses. Businesses don't pay taxes. Businesses pass those costs on to the consumer. If you're going to do that, you might as well ask Donald Trump to come and bring his tariffs with him.
I need your question, please.
Okay. Now, my question is, I asked this question last year. The roads in Brookline still suck, and the Brookline Senior Center still has to raise their own funds. Why?
All right, we're going to get started with Michael on that question.
Okay. So focusing on your 2 questions, what are the challenges with the roads, and why do the senior center need to raise money? So the crux of that issue is actually at the crux of the same issue that was happening in the last panel discussion, where they were talking about the $8.2 million budget gap. And what I said in my introduction is that the 3 problems that we are facing include the problem that town services are stretched too thin, and we need to be able to come up with larger sources of revenue. Now, we may have ongoing conversations and disagreements or negotiations about what our priorities are between roadways and senior centers and all the other town services, as well as the schools. But the crux of the problem is that we don't have the resources, and we also haven't found enough efficiencies within the operations of our government to make the best use of our resources. To the point of the roadways in particular, I would also say that there has been some work, and I know that there is planning in the DPW to come up with multi-year plans to improve the roadways. There has been significant disinvestment in previous years. There has also been allocation of our capital improvement program monies specifically for improving the roadways. We're also getting $29 million from the federal government for Washington Street as part of the Complete Streets program, and we continue to need to look for those kinds of resources as well. But all of this comes back to the budget.
Thank you so much, Michael. Liz, you're up.
Hi there. So can you just clarify the second part of your question between the who's your wife and not your wife, and the fact that you're politically incorrect, which I love, find refreshing. What was the second part of your question?
It's about funding for the senior center.
Thank you. That's important. Okay, I knew it was important. Okay, so the roads, we have neglected our roads for a long time, decades, and the pothole. We've had a situation in the Complete Streets have actually in some ways prevented us from refining and taking care of our roads and maintaining them, but that has actually shifted so that we can now look to planning to take care of our roads. So, but yes, exactly what Michael said, we do have a structural deficit and it makes it hard to take care of everything all the time. The senior center funding, I know we need to be raising, the senior center has to be a priority. I mean, the cost of not having the senior center funded properly is too high. It is just absolutely too high. So we need to find out, sorry, thank you. We need to find a way to manage that. That could be through looking for other grants. That could be for looking into what the town can offer. But we have to do it. It's just, it's a non-starter not to do it. So thanks.
Carlos?
So I just wanted to clarify something. I didn't say anything about raising taxes to the commercial businesses. I said that the commercial business is taxed at a different rate than the residential business. And what we should do is to increase the amount of commercial activity that we have in Brookline, like Watertown and other places have done, so that we can get more taxes from the business side of what's happening in Brookline, rather than relying on the residential side. Regarding the roads, we have 100 miles of roads, and we have a backlog of $135 million because we haven't maintained them appropriately over the last few decades. So that's one of the problems that we have. If we with the override that we had, we added the $12 million override that we passed a couple years ago. We've been adding $5 million each, or allowing for $5 million each year for repairing roads, but clearly that's not enough. The senior center gets 0.29% of the town budget. The schools get 141 million, or 63% of the budget. I think we can find more money for the senior center to do it, so it doesn't have to rely on private substance. How? Well, we're not talking about a lot of money.
Thank you, Carlos. We'll continue that conversation. We have audience questions.
No, yeah. Hello. So my name is Margot. I've lived in Brookline for decades. I've taught in Brookline for decades. My focus is on children, so I'm very upset about the possibility of Brookline Adult Ed going away. But tonight I'm going to focus in on elder abuse. When I was speaking to a police officer about this, he said, elder abuse, the best kept secret.
You have 30 seconds.
I want to know, out of the three of you, if an elder comes up to you and says, our apartments are being vandalized, things are being stolen from our apartments in affordable housing, by the way, there is affordable housing. I'm speaking for many seniors who are afraid to get kicked out of their affordable houses. And everyone that I have gone to, state rep, the police, lawyer wouldn't take it because no one wants to rock the boat.
You've reached.
So I'm looking for someone who rocks the boat.
Okay, and what is your question? How will they support seniors?
How will they rock the boat? Will they be a David in a community of a Goliath?
Thank you. We're going to start with
Because
Carlos.
they're all sleeping together.
Everybody should feel safe at home, no matter where you live. And the BHA now has a new director. Maybe he will be able to address any issues of safety that people feel in a better way. I think the select board, as a different entity from the BHA, must support the safety of all the residents and make sure that that the BHA does its job of creating a safe environment. it's a very complicated aspect, I guess, in other ways because of the different separations of who's in charge of the different entities. It's BHA is independent. It gets the money from Massachusetts and from the state, from the federal government. And then we have us, the town of Brookline, which again can support the residents and would have to work with the guidelines that we have in order to do a better job.
That's all. Thank you so much. There's no follow-up questions. Thank you. We'll continue that at the end of the session. Liz, you're up.
Is this on now? Okay. First of all, that's a terrible, I mean, it's just it's a great question, and I'm so glad you brought that to light. It's, Carlos, I think, explained pretty eloquently the separation between entities. But if somebody, were to come up to me and say, I know somebody's being abused, I would figure out who to call and put them in touch with, someone who could help. Because that, I just like, I'm sorry, I'm a little emotional actually from your question. I have no problem rocking a boat, but I'm not sure, it's a complicated question. Like, where's the boat at the boat? Yeah. I care about this community and I want this to be the best community it can be. And that includes public safety, and that includes care for people who are vulnerable, and that includes care for people who are otherwise invisible. So that's where I would stand or sit.
First of all, thank you very much for the question. That is clearly an unacceptable situation. I just want to clarify a couple of things. You had said affordable housing, and the conversation here very quickly went to the BHA. And I just wanted to confirm from you that were you actually talking about BHA housing or other sources of affordable housing? Because the question... Okay. So there, as we know, there are different ways that people get affordable housing within this town. Yes, it is an across-the-board problem, which is why diving into the details can be very important, and why asking questions about specific cases. All of those cases are terrible, and we need to have systems in place for protecting people, and we also need to make sure that those people actually feel like they're part of the community. Because the part of that really struck me the most was the fact that these are people who are afraid to show themselves and to feel like they are part of the community. And that is as much a tragedy of our town as the instances of abuse, and as horrible as they are as well. And so the work that we should be doing, as well as identifying the particular cases, is also clearly communicating that all of those members, whatever housing they live, are part of our community.
I'm Leslie Friedman, and I have lived in Brookline for 43 years. My question is more narrowed than a community-based question. A couple of years ago, I was very disappointed to read that a former select person felt that it was difficult to have a voice on the board because she was the only woman. Whether that was true or not is not relevant. My question is, how will each one of you individually make sure that diverse voices are heard and listened to and taken in as part of your conversation as select people, which then means the community will be more represented? Thank you.
We're starting with Liz.
Good question.
So the first thing I would say to you is, I've never looked through the world. I've never looked at the world through the eyes of I'm a woman, and so I need to like anything really. I've just always looked at what's in front of me and gone for it. That said, I think it helps when people can see people that look like them. They feel like, there's a little more. One of the school committee candidates said that earlier. It's helpful to see people that represent you. I do represent, on some level, half of the population here in Brookline. So I would like to see myself on the select board for that reason, but that's not the reason that I'm running. The reason that I'm running is because I have a small business and a front seat in a very, it's a majority minority precinct. I'm in precinct 4. I was drawn to it because I've grown up in a very diverse neighborhood, and I feel like this is the area where we need to grow as a town. 30 seconds. There's so much to say. My thoughts come in too fast to go out of my mouth. I have always worked for myself. I am not steeped in the institutional language around diversity and equity and inclusion, but diversity and equity and inclusion are values and principles that I think Brookline, strives for, and they're fundamental to having a strong town and a healthy town. And
Thank you, Liz. Michael,
that is
you're up.
it.
So thank you for the question. Let me start with a couple of thoughts. The first is that diverse representation is an important value, not only on the select board, but as others have mentioned, on all of the boards and commissions, and also in all of the stakeholder engagement that we do with the community. And that is true by gender, by family structure, by sexual orientation and gender identity and race and all of the other various forms of identity that people hold. The way that I, as a white male, relatively privileged person living in a town with lots of privilege generally, is that I have worked very hard to put myself into environments where other other groups that have collective identities have their own comfortable spaces, and to enter those spaces and try as much as I can to listen and learn how those people are viewing the matters at hand, whatever their struggles are, whatever the ideas are that we have.
Thank you, Michael.
I could say more.
Carlos, you're up.
Thank you for that question. I feel that way many times. I grew up in Spain. I came here. I was on the green card visa and then a green card for many years. And then I decided to become a U.S. citizen because what was happening in 2016, it wasn't looking good. And English is my second language. A lot of times people ask me, it's like, why do you always take a little bit of time to say something? And sometimes I feel it's because I'm translating from Spanish to English. But it allows you to see things from a different perspective, from a different culture, in many different ways. It's just not just the sort of the home versus here, but the language, and through that you can see things that you didn't know were there. So it's, as Michael said too, you end up putting yourself in other people's position. It's like, so if I'm seeing it this way, how are you seeing it, or how is that person seeing it? And we still have to work really hard, I think, on learning how to do that more. But I think, I would probably be the first select board member who's not U.S. born, and that may be a good thing or a bad thing.
Everyone has been so concise, so I believe we have time for one more audience question right there in the back.
My name is My name is Ronnie Shapiro. I'm a 40-some-year resident. I actually had submitted 3 questions. I know you said nobody else submitted questions, but I had submitted 3, but 2 of them have sort of been covered, which revolved around development and our financial issues. But the third one hasn't been. So I'm going to read it. Do you support having a charter commission question on next year's ballot so we could all decide whether or how to improve Brookline's government?
Ooh, I was hoping this one would come up. We are going to get started with Carlos.
So I support the Charter Commission in the way that I think it's okay to look at things in a different way. What other parts of what other ways of governing can you have? But I want to make sure, and Rebecca's here, I want to make sure that the Charter Commission does not have an idea before they start, that they really look at all the options and then throw that to the residents to find out what they think. For me, town government is the most democratic way of government. You have 255 town meeting members rather than maybe 12 council members, and those 255 members can participate in different levels. They can vote twice a year in town meeting, or they can be like us and run for select board. So I think it's I didn't say crazy this time. So
I'm going to have them do their roll call at the
yes.
end, but we'll let them elaborate now.
So to me, it just opens a lot more participation from town, and it also allows for a much varied view than just from a few people.
Liz, you're up.
And yes.
So that was very well put, actually. I would say, in the same way, I find that right now, especially when we're seeing democracy all around the world being challenged and threatened, and town meeting being the smallest form of representational democracy, I love this. The idea that we're all here right now discussing whether or not we would do that is democratic. So yes, would I support it? I'm not against it. So that means I would support it. But I feel, it's easy to think that you can solve a problem by changing something dramatically. And what I know about cities is that they have a lot of problems, kind of like we have a lot of problems. It's a human nature problem that we have problems, and we're going to be solving them forever. Can we be more efficient? Definitely. Should this charter commission look into that? Definitely. I would like to see what are the changes that we can make as a town. Can we compare and contrast those? I don't know the answer. I'm open. I like hearing arguments. I like great ideas. I had Rebecca Stone opened my eyes to some things that I hadn't really thought of, and I love this town meeting format. So I'm passing on the mic.
Thank you very much for the question. So the important question that I think you asked was whether or not we supported the commission. And there the answer for me is absolutely yes. We are all running for select board because we have challenges to face in this moment. But when you are asking the question of what is the best governance for Brookline in 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 years, then having that conversation now, I think, has a lot of value and a lot of importance. There are many different forms of government, and I am hoping and expecting that the formal process that the commission entails will include the study of all of those forms of government, including our own. And being able to clearly articulate the pros and cons of each, whether there are challenges to accountability, whether there are challenges to getting sufficient voice into our decision-making process, or the other challenges that we get from different forms of government. The most important question, though, is not actually, do I love being part of town meeting, or do I want to be on the select board? It is actually, what is the best form of government that will serve all of the residents of Brookline, not just the ones who are in this room, but also the ones who, for various reasons, aren't able to
Thank you, Michael.
participate.
I'm going to be fair and make everyone do a quick roll call vote and ask if you are in support of a charter exploratory commission, starting with Carlos.
Yes.
Liz? And Michael.
Yes, but I don't think it's an exploratory commission. I think it is a charter commission.
Okay. I could then say, do you want to be a city or a town? But I don't think I'm going to put them under that much pressure. Take a deep breath, have a drink of water. You are about to deliver your closing statements to this incredibly thoughtful and engaged group of residents. The seniors in Brookline are so special, and I want to thank everyone who came out, especially the folks who were taking notes, the people who submitted questions in advance, and the people who were brave enough to ask questions in live time tonight. So we're going to start with Liz. You have 1 minute. Oh, grab a microphone.
Thank you. I have to say I'm very fond of my fellow select board candidates. We're going through this every day, sometimes twice a day. I have the advantage of a front row seat to many of the most challenging issues we face. I live and work within a dense commercial area where the ecosystem of walkable neighborhoods, green space, transportation, and mixed-use development relies on balancing competing needs in small spaces. Every select board member relies on our experienced town staff, advisors, and public input to guide their decisions. And I represent the streetwise, common sense, no-nonsense experience of a small business owner who has weathered changes from shifting markets to changing technologies to a host of variables to living in reality. Like any serious professional, I balance budgets, hire, consult, collaborate, and take care of business in a world we must constantly adapt to new realities. I understand what this means for Brookline. I understand what this means for the small business districts. And I feel like this experience and perspective is currently missing on the select board, and that I fill a space that is unique. I've spent my career supporting less visible populations. So please vote.
Michael, you are up.
So, first of all, thank you, Devin, for your excellent moderation today. Thank you to Brookline CAN and the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. I'd like to make some closing remarks about leadership, and particularly leadership on the select board. There are both a number of skills and also ideas that the leadership of the select board needs in order to serve the town. Leaders must have vision. Leaders must be able to establish goals that meet that vision. Leaders must be able to deliver results, and leaders must be able to hold themselves accountable. And while doing all of these things, leaders must be able to treat everyone with dignity and respect, and also, of course, keep a close eye on details and especially on our finances. I've done this work over and over and over again in a variety of different contexts, in business, in public service, organizing in town meeting, and therefore I'm asking for your vote.
Thank you, Michael. Carlos, you are up.
Thank you thank you everybody for coming tonight. Sometimes you can't answer, or the answer you give in a sprint of 1 minute and 30 seconds is maybe not broad enough or complete enough as what you wanted to do. But one thing I do know is I do have the experience, the hands-on experience from the advisory committee the last 5 years, which is the finance committee, which goes through the budget and everything, all the warrant articles. I got to know Devin and the rest of the staff throughout the last 5 years, working with them and the budgets. And I can, through that experience, I can hit the ground running on day one, which is when you add the idea that our architectural experience as an architect allows me to see and envision what Brookline can look like zoning-wise, and as it expands. I think it's a well-rounded effort, and my experience is that
Thank you, Carlos. You can continue that conversation with Carlos after the forum. Please give our candidates a round of applause. Absolutely. Excellent job. You have hard work ahead of you when you go to the polls to make your selection. Thank you again, everyone, for coming. The voter guide will be out soon. I want to thank the League of Women Voters, Brookline CAN, and the Senior Center. And I want everyone out of here ASAP. The Senior Center closed an hour and 15 minutes ago, and my dream is to be able to send staff home by 6:30. So thanks so much for coming out. Continue these conversations outside.